This was one of the most perverse inventions of the Japanese invaders during World War II. 8 Korean soldiers were carrying a wooden board. As soon as a Japanese officer stepped on it with force, the Korean soldiers below started running desperately forward. Even in the face of wind and rain, they had to struggle to run in the muddy ground until they sent the Japanese officer back to the camp. These Korean soldiers who were forcibly conscripted into the Japanese army not only had to charge to their deaths at the forefront of the battle, but also suffered the humiliation of the Japanese invaders. If they made the slightest mistake, they would be beaten and scolded in various ways. The Korean soldiers dared not resist and could only swallow their anger. However, their chance for revenge soon came. In 1939, the Battle of Khalkhin Gol broke out. The Japanese army provoked the Soviet Union in the Outer Mongolia region. The First Army of the Soviet Union, with Georgy Zhukov as the commander, dispatched 500 tanks to encircle and annihilate the Japanese army. When the Japanese officers saw the dense formation of Soviet tanks approaching, they were stunned with fear. Shortly after, the Soviet artillery shells rained down. The Japanese soldiers in the front were instantly blown into the air. Facing the iron and steel might of the Soviet Union, the Japanese invaders could only send out suicide squads. They drove trucks tied with gasoline barrels to crash into the tanks. This kind of suicide attack completely enraged the Soviet army, and more Soviet tanks charged onto the battlefield. The Japanese army had to send out suicide squads again. They tied bombs to themselves and crawled under the tanks. There were deafening explosions, but this still couldn't change the situation on the battlefield at all. Watching the continuous arrival of Soviet tanks on the battlefield, the Japanese army was completely at a loss. Some of the cowardly ones even started turning around and running away.